All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, FCM community. This is your yearly podcast, the only one that you've gotten so far this year. I do apologize for that, but you know, life. This is your post draft first round recap. It is me and Maddie in our new format of speed. Telling you how bad your picks were. PR is here to pop in and out as needed and desired. Probably mostly around his picks, but I know he probably has comments on other ones as well. So we will also get to hear from PR here and there and a little bit of everywhere. So without any further ado, we will get started as this is, again, a speed round. So first pick of the draft, Arizona takes Roger Hashbarger, a left-handed hitting, right-handed throwing second baseman. And there was a lot of top picks, Maddie, but I think this is the guy that had I a pick. This is the guy take a number one overall. Has a very good projection for his bat. He's got a very good defensive profile. Can play second base. Can't play third base. And I think there's a lot to like him. If I had number one overall pick, probably the guy that I'd take too. What do you think about Hashbarger?
I'll tell you what I thought about him.
Yeah, Pierre, it's your pick. You tell us what you think about him. It's a good call.
Yeah. So I was debating some other guys. I liked Hindle a lot, who went right after him. And Marriott's for what it's worth, Pat Marriott's eye kind of caught my attention and stuff like that. But he was just the only guy to take. I really don't think there's much explaining to do. If you don't take him, then you're kind of trying to go with something else. Stoving I had on my list, but he had that random drop, so I kind of write him off and stuff like that. So it was Hash. It was uh, it was either Hashburger or maybe Abbott. Honestly, I was considering Abbott just because of the speed threat and stuff like that. But yeah, that's basically it.
Maddie, do you have a comment on Hash?
Yeah, I think pretty much he was good, a good guy to take there. Really, only thing, the only drawback I could find on him is that his eye is pretty crap. He might not be that all-around hitter. That's the only concern I would really have with him. But I think it's the guy you would take. You can play him at second or third, probably ideally third. Lefty bat. Maybe the contact versus lefties, it might not get there, but it'll be close. I would say now, so let's say you probably could play him every day. The power should play, especially in Arizona. So overall, you can't hate on that pick.
All right, I think we're all in agreement here. All right, two overall should have been Oakland. However, Doug pulled a magician's act going into the weekend and ended up picking 30th instead of second overall. So everybody got a little free bump to their pick this year, which Florida took full advantage of, taking Nelson Hindle second overall. I know this is a guy a lot of people were asking about. A lot of people checked in with me about pre-draft, post-draft, and kind of everywhere in between. Definitely a bat that I really liked. I mean, this is that typical bat that I think people, we always comment that there's some of these bats that people sleep on. I don't think this is quite that bat because he's a lot more advanced than I think some of the ones that people do sleep on in most drafts. But he has a high power, good eye. Solid contact. He's a righty, which is one of those things that sometimes makes people slip because he's not quite a lefty. But I think this is probably the best power bat potentially in the draft. He's a guy that I would hesitate taking top five just because I think there were some other guys that had good bats and also had a glove. This guy does not have a glove. You could probably stick him at first base and be okay with it. But I mean, he's probably best suited for a DH role. But he's going to hit the cover off the ball. I think that High Heat will be very happy to get this bat in the middle of his lineup here in a couple of years.
I think, Hindle can definitely easily play first base. The range is actually very good for a first baseman. So the fact that the fielding isn't great, you have range. So it's kind of the give and take there. The one thing that I would really kind of caution about is his contact. It's not that great, and he doesn't have a ton of upside. And seeing how it's more than 20 difference than his power, I would question if it'll get to where you really want it. I believe my rankings had him peaking out at like 74. So considering that he's a 3-drop contact, the contact only getting to 74, really dicey. It's just there's not a lot of room for error there, and I don't know. This could be a really great pick or a really bad pick.
Yeah, it will be interesting kind of to watch where that contact finally does settle in. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. That can make a big difference in the overall life of this prospect. Um, Baltimore, a team of the PR left to go to the desert, comes up next, the third overall. They take Nick Southern Comfort, a second baseman who also projects to have a pretty decent power bat, albeit a low eye. Kind of I'd say a little bit similar to the guy that we just talked about 2 picks ago in Harshbarger, a guy that can play both second and third base. Projects to have a high power bat with maybe a little bit of a lower eye overall, but a guy that again, another guy would be very comfortable here taking top three with that defense and the offensive makeup. Should be quite a good player.
Yeah, I would say I take this guy. I mean, he's basically a carbon copy of Hashburger. Just the fact that he's not a lefty. However, he does have considerable better health, so he's going to see the field a decent amount more. 10 to 15 games per season. So I think the give and take makes them about even. Yeah, really good pick. Guy you can slide in second or third. Probably fits more at third.
PR, do you have any thoughts about this one?
No, Matt, hit the nail on the head. I think there was the top three kind of third baseman, second baseman kind of guys, and Marriott, Comfort, and Hashbarger, and Comfort's one of them. I think I do prefer Marriott a little bit better because Hash was a lefty. If Hash wasn't a lefty, I think I would have went Marriott, honestly, because his eye is just so much better and his numbers are just so much more appealing. But yeah, but great pick by Baltimore, obviously.
Yeah, and that does bring us to the next pick overall here with the White Sox at 4 overall, taking Pat Red Roof Marriott. I think this is a very interesting pick. I mean, there's definitely a number of bats at the top of the draft that you like, and honestly, any of the guys with defense, you're gonna like a little bit more. Obviously, Marriott does not have the defense that Comfort or Hashburger has, but he is definitely a guy that I think, again, like you said, with that increased eye, might have that higher OPS, might end up hitting a little bit better than some of them, and he might not, but definitely a good pick. His defense profile maybe doesn't quite scream third base. Maybe you're more comfortable with him at second base. He has a little bit of speed there, which should be helpful for that second base position. So I think he's definitely more of a natural second baseman than a third baseman, but that bat should play very well out of that position. So I definitely think that was a good pick by Mike there for overall taking Marriott.
See, I definitely think he's a third baseman just because of that range is not good at all. If you want to put what's going to be about a 70 to 79 speed guy at second base with like 80 range when he's peaked out, I mean, go for it. It's not gonna end very well for you, but you can do it. Really, he kind of looks like the build of Warren Hyde. Put him over there at third base. Hope he develops into a nice 850 plus bat and parks a lot of home runs for you. And when he doesn't, he'll draw the walk.
Yeah, I definitely think that is the backside of him. The walks could be very beneficial to that offensive makeup. Texas picks 5. Texas takes Buster Sledge. That's just a great baseball name. I think maybe not as goofy some of the names that we like to look at in the draft, but I think Buster Sledge is just a phenomenal name for the Rangers here in this outfielder. Kind of a little bit of a surprise, maybe, I think, to me. This was not a guy that I was expecting to see go this high. Not to say that it's a bad pick by any stretch of the imagination. You got a lefty that is clearly a power hitter with a decent defensive makeup in the outfield. Had a bit of a drop, had a 3-point drop on his birthday, which happened back in January. So not a bad drop. College numbers are really good. I mean, he is just a pure power hitter, pure home run hitter. I mean, he's just crushing the ball. So it'll be interesting to see that to how he goes. There was a bunch of bats that I had rated above him, but I could see why War Priest went this way. I mean, this is a guy that should hit well in that American League West based on a lot of those ballparks where he's going to be spending most of his time. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays. But Maddie, what do you think about Sledge?
I didn't really like the pick. I mean, just to say his drop, it was a random drop. There's nothing about aging that we saw. He actually did drop from a 90 peak. It was kind of interesting. At least he didn't drop any in overall. Whether his vitals shifted at all, I don't know, because I don't really care. But I just think he's that guy that's going to turn out to be a nice, solid player, and that's just it. It's nothing wowing about a top 10 pick that you know is just a solid guy. I'll hit some homers and he'll play solid defense. That's really about it. There's nothing else. It's just, no.
No. Things that we hear Maddie say a lot in trade negotiations and sometimes on the draft podcast. So it is what it is there. There's definitely some guys I see that could be like him, guys that haven't been quite as good as might be expected. But we'll see. I think that there's a chance there. But yeah, again, I think the next guy that San Diego took, and again, another one of those drafts that I'm going to say that I like some of the things that Percy does. I really liked Carl Stoving, who was taken 6th overall. I think there was a number of pitchers at the top of the draft. For some reason, he was the one that stuck out to me the most. Is kind of the one that I really liked. Though he is a typical pit, that kind of power control pitcher that I generally go after. And he has a nice strikeout to walk ratio, good ERAs, doesn't give up too many home runs. Like there's just a lot of things that I really liked in him. So he was a guy that I might have taken instead at 5 overall had I been War Priest. But I think Percy did very well to take Stoving where he did at 6 overall. He was definitely a guy that I kind of had rated as my best or my favorite pitcher. Maybe not the best pitcher, I guess, but my favorite pitcher in the draft was Carl Stoving. So I think Percy did very well to get him here at 6.
Yeah, I think this was a pretty good pick. It's kind of that build, kind of like you're talking about. That's been really interesting lately. We've seen that where the guy has good control, with very, very nice power, and then of course the movement is lagging behind all of that. So he has that going for him, which is nice. If you dig the repertoire stuff, he has kind of what you want. At least one pitch going to be really dominant, another pitch that should be at least, so average or plus, and then another pitch that's a thing. Just overall, not a lot to hate about him. Young guy should have plenty of time to develop. Go get him.
Rar. If I had there was somebody was asking me, I might have even been talking to PR pre-draft. I was talking to somebody about a top pick, and they were saying, "Who are you looking at?" I'm like, if I'm not taking a bat, then I'm taking Stoving because I thought he was again my favorite pitcher of the draft. I think one of the better pitchers in the draft. So I really like what San Diego's doing out there, which is unfortunate now that I'm in the National League instead of the American League. When I was even happier to say that I like National League teams doing well in drafts. So Arizona's up again at 7, taking first baseman Scott Wright, a big. I don't even want to say power hitting lefty because he has that contact first kind of demeanor to him, which could make for a very intriguing player. I definitely know when you see somebody guy that has nice power, nice eye, and really good contact, I know who everybody wants it to be. I'm not sure that Mr. Wright is going to be that gentleman, but I think he could be a very fun guy to watch heading down the line. So PR, this is your pick. You tell us why you went right instead of left.
I was definitely debating
She was wearing it forever. She was running around with it like here.
Pick up feedback from somebody here. Let me find out who it is. We'll blame Y for that. Oh, he fixed it. All right, good job, Mike. All right, go on,
cool.
PR.
All right. So yeah, there was a number of people I was looking at. Abbott, who went to Chicago, somebody I was definitely looking at here. And a couple of other dudes. But ultimately I went right because he had that jump. When he had that jump, I liked the way his vitals were progressing. He was young enough. There was a couple of guys. I probably could have went with a pitcher or somebody else instead of going first baseman. But Wright, obviously reminded me a little bit of Thomas Herrera, who I had in Baltimore, and obviously he has, he's a little bit like Archie a little bit, but you got to develop perfect to get like that. But I figured I could do a lot worse, and in Arizona, he's definitely going to be a really nice bat. And compared to everybody else taken, I mean, there were a couple of other names that I felt like if we're going ceiling and long term and value right here, Wright was the guy.
Matty, what did you think about Wright?
Yeah, he was a dude. You probably think that I wouldn't like this type of a build, but the fact of where his contact is and where the overall is and how much upside he has, and he's only 18 and this and that and the other thing, hell yeah, go for him, because there's a legitimate shot that he should.
Matty, you cut out there. All right. Well, Matty seemed to like him. He seems to like the legit upside while he works on his mic issues. You can clearly think of where he was potentially going with that, and we will say Archiego was the way that he might have been going with that. Atlanta is up next at 8 overall, taking pitcher Nelson Costillas. Costillas. Fuck it. He is a 16-year-old left-hander. Another interesting pitcher in this draft. I know he was one that was rated quite highly on my list. He is a guy. Okay, Matty believes that he's back, so that's good. This is a guy that should be that pitcher that everybody wants early in the draft. A guy that I'm surprised, honestly, that PR didn't take, since he's that ground ball pitcher that he typically likes. As his movement catches up to his control, I mean, you can see where this guy's just going to be a monster controlled movement guy. Especially with that curveball and slider being those dominant pitches, and the fastball being a little bit behind. Puts up good stats, not giving up too many home runs. Pretty good strikeout to walkout ratio for a ground ball guy. Like, there's a lot to like, and not even including the fact that, this kind of age makes just Gilly all wet inside. So I think this is a good pick for a retooling Atlanta. Matty, what did you think?
Yeah, well, for Gilly, he's still like a little too young, but I mean, yeah, control's there. He has a little bit of power too, so that's pretty damn fucking cool. The ground ball rate's there. This age, they don't really care much about the home runs, but they're not ass cheese. So yeah, you like him. The only thing I would see as a drawback would be the health is really, really high, but I've seen sometimes where that doesn't matter. Guy just develops like you think he should, and then the health is kind of like their nice little insurance plan. Instead of him being injured for a sim here or there, this guy's gonna pitch 32 games every single year and just be really damn good. I mean, go for the young guys. Go for the young guys, not just because that's what Gilly likes.
And Gilly really does like them. Pierre, I want to get your thoughts on this pick. What made you not take this guy a pick before?
I think it's just the experience, not the experience I had, but he reminds me a lot of Nat Larson. And I remember when we drafted Nat Larson back at Houston. I definitely pushed TT to move up, to definitely take him. I was just hounding him. TT was looking at some other guys. And I got to be honest, I don't, looking at you don't really want to worry about his high school numbers when he's a 52 overall. But the issue I had was him being a lefty. I got to be honest. Normally, I don't like caring about those things, but at least in my park in Arizona, him being a lefty might have caused some problems. And while I really like Nat Larson, he didn't turn into exactly the pitcher that I thought he would in terms of production. So while Castillo should, hopefully maybe debunk that and turn into a really good pitcher. But I'm calling this one him probably like his best year is probably going to be like a 3.25, 3.5 ERA.
All right. We'll see. It'll be interesting. I based on the park that I'm in now, I'm more prone to going toward those ground ball guys. So as much as I would have taken Stovin as my top pitcher off the board, I think I would have really, really looked at this guy as kind of that next guy off the board. So, but we will continue to move on here, almost finishing out the top 10 with the 9th overall pick going to St. Louis, and then taking Sean Brinton, a 20-year-old right-hander, with that control power build again, low ground ball rate. Gives up some home runs, but again, I don't think a scary amount, and has that really high strikeout to walkout ratio. And this is a guy that definitely projects to be, a pretty good pitcher. I like this. This seems like I hate to say typical, but the typical GD pick. A GD pick, or even had Hokie been up here, Hokie pick. I could see Hokie going up with this guy. I think this guy will pitch relatively well in St. Louis. So I think this is a opportunity with a lot of these top 10 teams where they got to slide up one whole spot in the draft. And leaving a couple guys maybe more open to them than otherwise would have been there. I think that St. Louis does a good job to grab Brinton here at number 9.
I mean, you can see why GD likes him. He has the control and the power, and that's what he goes after. And I think he could probably develop into some nice-looking vitals, but there'll be those really great, nice-looking vitals that turn around and are just like a 3.75 ERA pitcher. So solid guy, but a guy that I go, eh.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see the other end of it. I've swung and missed on these guys plenty of times in the past. So Chicago goes next. Chicago takes Gary Abbott, another guy that I had a lot of conversations about pre-draft where I thought he would go. There was where I thought he would go, where I thought he should go, and everything in between. But no surprise to see Andy's Cubs taking Gary Abbott here at 10 overall. He's a switch hitting shortstop with speed. Glove is not quite where you want to see it. Arm's not quite where you want to see it. And the health is really high. So there are some concerns there. But the speed's legit. Everything's 91 plus. And again, switch hitter. If you didn't realize that when any of these drafting for teams, he takes switch hitters early, often, and always. So the fact that he took a switch hitter with speed, even with a slightly subpar glove, should be no surprise to anybody. Gary Abbott going 10 overall. Maddie, what were your thoughts on Gary Abbott?
Well, the defense sucks ass. That's nothing that I would really want to love. But the guy only fell too when he aged. It's really nice health. The base running attributes are out of this world. So you flip him over to second base, and he'll probably be fine there. If not, you DH him, like Peter does with Simon Bush, and just say, fuck it. Guy's going to be in your lineup with 91 health, going to be in your lineup every day. Stealing 60-plus bases, doing whatever he wants to do with the bat. And as long as he's not killing you defensively, it's a very, very valuable piece.
Yeah, I like that idea, man. I like that idea of switching the second base. Had I the guy, I'd probably do the same thing. I've never quite been desperate enough to push it. I mean, I think there was one point way back in the 60s where I had a guy that was, high speed, high contact, just shit fielding that I did DH or stick at first base for a little while before I was like, oh, I'd rather have home runs there. And I kind of got rid of that idea. But it'll be interesting to see how he goes moving forward, because again, with that lack of defense, it'd be really interesting to see how he develops. Ron Weedle goes to Toronto, 11th overall. Weedle is a control first high ground ball guy. He's one of those guys that we see in I want to say Zach Fitz, and there was another guy that over on the Mets. I believe that's is similar to this. Fitz might be the wrong comparison that I'm thinking of, but a very interesting pick here. Get home runs not an issue. Pretty good strikeout to walkout ratio. There's I think a lot of things to like about him. He's 19 years old. He does have a November birthday, so we'll have to see over the offseason kind of what happens to him. All in all, but I think a good pick here by Hokie, who continues just to build up those Blue Jays, and just to see where he could take them in the constantly shifting and developing AL East. What do you think about this pick, Matty?
Normally, I'd probably hate on this pick just because of the control gap to the movement that's pretty large for as low as upside that he has. However, kind of like you already noted, the home runs are low, so I'd give that a pass. I think he could be a very, very nice pitcher. I looked at him in the same way that I looked at the Royals. They took, what was his name, Seth or Sean Marin was his last name, long time ago. I think that same type of pitcher where the control is easily going to be the best attribute, but the home runs don't look like an issue at all. And you combine all of that; those are some really, really nice pitchers.
Yeah, Zach Fitt definitely had more of a home run issue in college and high school there, by far. So maybe not quite the perfect comparison there, but I vaguely remember similar vitals looking on draft day. So it'll be interesting to see what Toronto does. They've been rebuilding there for a couple seasons now. Haven't really seen much on the field yet. It'll be interesting to see when that franchise starts to turn around. Already on the 12, the Yankees are here picking at 12. They are taking Kerry Fournier, a switch hitting second baseman. So Rocky dipping into the Andy book, taking the switch hitter. And this guy has a lot better fielding than the last switch guy that we talked about, but a lot less speed. The speed is definitely not something that is going to be terribly effective for this individual. It'll be interesting to see how he goes because the bat looks pretty solid. Not great, but solid. And the D looks like it should be pretty good for a second baseman because the speed should be just enough to give him that boost that he needs to play second, not short. But again, I thought there was better players still on the board, so I'm a little bit surprised at this pick. What did you think, though?
Well, he is young, so that's a plus, and he has range. After that, I don't really know what's good about him. The fielding is pretty low. He's going to make a lot of errors, which you could say it's okay with amount of range, but I'd like to see some more speed before I want to give up that much in fielding for him, or at least something else in his game. His eye is honestly, it's complete shit. It's the worst eye that you can have. It's a good eye because he does not strike out hardly at all, but it's not going to walk a lot either, I don't think. He is 17, like I said, so maybe there's a lot of time for him to develop, and he does turn into a pretty solid bat. But I think that's really where where his value is gonna rest is can he hit? Because I don't think he's gonna be valuable enough in the field with averages, speed, and the lackluster fielding rating.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confuddled by it. He also had a 4-point birthday drop. I believe it was a birthday drop and not a random 4-point. Random 4-point obviously would make it a little bit different. But yeah, it looks like a 4-point birthday drop. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how he goes. But you're right. I think if the bat comes along and the defense
It looks. Well, no, it looked like a 3-point birthday drop.
3-point. I have him. Really, I have him on draft on free open at 66.89, and he's a 85 now, isn't he?
So he had unless I screwed something up, it would look like he had a little bit of a jump. From the draft to the posted file.
Okay, yeah. What do you have him at?
In my file, I have him as a 66.88 at the Winnable file. That's when I took that. And then at the Sim4 file, I have him as 6685. So you might be right. He had a 4-point birthday drop, and then he
had a
shifted up
4-point
a little
birthday drop.
bit.
I think the shift came. So here's where the shift came from in my mind, Maddie. I put my file in before Andy did his defensive edits. When Andy goes through and puts his defensive edits, a lot of these second base, shortstop, these actual defensive type of guys get the 1-point overall bump from the D edits. So my file would not have that bump in it, and so that should make up the difference.
Yeah, I
That's
scout
what I'm-
from that very first file, and after Andy made the edits, he dropped to an 88, and then his birthday drop was 3 points.
Okay, so his birthday bar treat 3 points. Okay, so that's a little less scary then. Yeah, I generally try to wait for the edits. I didn't this year because I wanted to scout early, because I was expecting to have to put in a list. I then ended up trading out anyway, so it wasn't a big deal. And I'm quite happy what I traded out for, so it's not a big deal. But we'll move on.
I would say we've probably figured out the fact that this guy isn't going to have very long to develop because he doesn't have a lot of upside as it is. You know, who knows? Mogul can do whatever it wants to, but just quick math would say he will have, depends on where it goes, anywhere from 4 to 6 years to develop. So
Yeah,
probably going to be peaking out long before 25.
Yeah, that would be my guess too. Yeah, that my thought was 21 to 23. Yeah, that'd be 4 to 6 years. Yeah, well, we'll see. You know, maybe and it's one of those things too. You're gonna hit the drink token on this one too. We'll see what winter ball does to him. I'm assuming most of these guys taking the first round are going to see a winter ball, and we'll see what that can do for them because that can make a big difference overall. Cincinnati goes 13, takes left-handed left fielder Daryl Judson. Who is an interesting looking player. It looks like the bat should be kind of fun. Looks to have a little bit of defense. Not enough that I feel comfortable or happy with his defense, but more than serviceable, we'll call it. I'm not. He was not a guy that was on my list, to be honest with you, guys that I had scouted. But I mean, he should have pretty good contacts, decent power, good eye, and enough fielding to get by. So, I mean, maybe you're looking at a pretty damn good 2-hitter when all's said and done. So, what do you think about Judson?
I pretty much think he sucks donkey ass. You look at what does he do well? I don't know. I'm not sure. Really not sure. You might do everything really decently. Can you start him? Yeah, I probably would agree with that. Start him out in left field, have nice range. The bat will be okay enough, especially with him being a lefty. But I would say, I mean, it's sort of on the lines of Texas's pick for Buster Sledge. It's not as good as that at all. It's on those lines of just, guy, I think he's that guy that you're okay with starting, but you would definitely pounce on the first chance to upgrade him.
Yeah, no, I think that was a very keen description of him. I know a lot of people that they get a decent outfielder like that, they play him, and as soon as they can upgrade him, they upgrade him. So, we'll see. I don't know. Theo generally does a pretty good job with this draft, so we'll see about Judson. But yeah, there was a couple other bats that are going to come up, I think, in the next 10 picks or so, that I thought were probably better options, or at least higher percentage options, we'll say. Including the guy that I'm pretty sure I was arguing with somebody quite a bit. It might have been Jermaine, who was not going to be a top 10 pick, and then it wasn't a top 10 pick. So look at that. I win again. Anyway, Cleveland, that guy Howie picks 14th, and he picks Ed Bonzan, a guy that most of us would look at first blush and go, no, probably not. But there's something about him that I really kind of dig. I know. By that saying, I'm not saying that he's necessarily going to be a good pitcher or even a great pitcher. I think the projections have him popping out maybe 80 control, 80 power, and 90s movement. But some of those guys can pitch really, really well. I had a pitcher about 10, 12 years back that had similar vitals, like these low 80s power movement, or control power, excuse me, with 90s movement, who just pitched phenomenally, though flamed on, pitched 3 or 4 really good seasons, and then flamed out really quick. Didn't have that staying power that you really want to see in a big arm. But these are the kind of pitchers that, most people kind of ignore or don't like, that sometimes end up being very good, even if it's just for a short amount of time. So all in all, I kind of dig the pitcher.
I mean, if you like a guy who doesn't pitch the ground balls, honestly, it's probably going to give up either a lot of hits or home runs because he's very advanced. I don't know how much I believe those amateur numbers at all. And then you say that if you like a guy who can't control the ball over the plate, yeah, this is the guy for you. I mean, this is just, I don't know, but yeah, I'm all for being a guy who's not one of those of the vitals have to be above the overall, because sometimes you can develop past that, or eventually, even if your vitals are above the overall can advance past that. Not all for that, but this is just one of those. There's nothing there's nothing that's above it. He's already 75 overall, 92 health. Yuck.
Do you know who it reminds me of? And this is a player that I didn't have, and I refused to trade for, no matter how many times Hokie told me that I was wrong.
John Mullinax?
No, wasn't that guy. It was a lefty guy that floated around forever.
He's on Atlanta right now.
He might be on. Is he on Atlanta right now?
Yeah.
The name has escaped me, but he went to
Victor
Taipei,
Baji.
that's the one. Yes, Baji. He went to Taipei like 18 times in a row, and he's one of those guys that looks like he should suck. Like his low 70s control, like nothing about him says I should pitch well. And then like he tends to have some good seasons. So I'm not, and I don't think he's going to be as bad vital wise as Baji, but those kind of guys sometimes can surprise you. Brian Radke, for example, who was in PR sold to me from Baltimore to Jesus Christ, Seattle. He was a guy that had similar kind of lowish control, power, high movement vitals. Didn't pitch great every year, but there was a couple years there he pitched really, really well. So I kind of see that type of potential in Bodzan.
Well, with both of those guys, and pretty much they are is, I mean, when everything hits, they can pitch well, but Radke has a 3.91 career ERA, and Baji has a 4.28 career ERA. Maybe it's not a little fair for Baji since he's on the last legs of his career, but the good pitchers are still at least a sub 4 ERA for their entire career. So,
I thought that
maybe.
there were. I thought for pick 14, you could have did worse. With this pick, I'm optimistic. I normally don't like those power guys, but I was speaking to a couple people, J-Main being one of them, and he had him on his list. So I think it'd be interesting to see how he turns out.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those guys that I kind of marked down on my sheet to kind of keep an eye on because I'm curious of what's going to happen. So next is Seattle. Seattle takes Alex USA Torres, who is a right-handed 20-year-old starting pitcher. Again, this is another one of those builds that I've kind of started to like over the last 8 seasons or so. These control then power then movement builds. Interesting to see Seattle take this build, though. However, as they've been trying to get away from D Ward for quite a bit, who has a very similar build. But this is a guy that had 1 year where he had a horrendous amount of home runs, and then a bunch of years where home runs weren't really an issue. Strikeout to walkout ratio is not quite as good as you would see in a power pitcher, but again, he's not quite a power pitcher, is he? So it'll be interesting. These guys, in my opinion, are either quite good and very underrated, or just miss and end up being mildly terrible. So I'm not really sure which direction this guy will go. In all honesty, I don't think that I had him actually similar. This USA Torres, I think I had him similarly rated to a guy we talked about just a few minutes ago, and I already forget which one it was. But they have a similar career projection. So it'll be interesting to see that how he posts up against I believe it might have been Britain. I'll have to go back and double check. But Maddie, what did you think about USA Torres?
He sucks ass. He already jumped, and it was quite a large jump in overall, which we're gonna do the quick math. I mean, right now he would have 11 upside. You know that a drop's coming. Oh, it doesn't spell well for him having very long to develop. Could get really lucky, and that could have just been an amazing jump, and he goes somewhere. But this is a guy that, for the evidence that I see, I say the hell away from, because I think he's going to peak out at 22 or 23, and there's not enough meat on the bone for him to develop into anything decent. The build is actually, it's not the worst thing, but just with knowing that he doesn't have, well, I don't think he'll have much time to develop. I'll let someone else take a chance on that rather than myself in the first round. He's a guy you call up to that 5th spot and you hope he's going to do something, and then when he sucks ass, you jettison him back to AAA. He makes his career as a journeyman, long reliever, 5th starter for the rebuilders.
I should have gone back one more pick. He has a very similar projection to Bodzan, who I liked a lot more with the last pick. Bodzan obviously being 21 and a little bit more advanced. USA Torres, obviously not 21 yet, but will be 21. And yeah, he did have that big overall jump right before draft day, which can be good, can be bad. We'll see how the
Well, yeah,
rest of
because
his projection
Bodzan
goes.
should have probably twice as amount of upside as Lucha Torres.
Right. Well, and maybe that's why I like him more. So, or maybe I'm just making shit up again. Philadelphia
fun.
goes. I do enjoy it quite a bit. That's why we make me do these every year. Next up is Philadelphia's pick. Dave already knows how I feel about Howard Veray. I liked him quite a bit, and I told Dave that when he messaged me, but I think this morning, that I was a big fan of this pick. This is one of those guys that another one of those guys that I feel like either becomes good and has some nice longevity and like just puts up a pretty good career, or busts out. But I think Veray is going to be that potentially good with a longer career kind of type guy. Very good vitals. Even though, one is below, one is at, one is above his overall, he's 18. He's a lefty. He is that kind of control, power, movement, build in that order. He had a birthday already passed in February. He's looking pretty solid. I like Veray quite a bit. When I was talking about guys that I really liked at the top of this draft, pitching wise, he was one of them. Honestly, there was. We've already talked about a couple of them. We've talked about Stoving. Here's Veray. We talked about Castillas as well. And there's one other guy who we haven't gotten to yet because he hasn't been drafted yet, who I kind of also liked in that top end. Actually, the two other guys. I apologize. And that top end of the draft. So I really like the fact that Dave was able to get him, especially in this portion of the draft. These guys usually go around this range, but I sometimes see him drop into the early 20s. I think Dave makes a very good pick here with Veray.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where his home runs take him. The fact that he throws 97, a low home run or a low ground ball rate. If the home run is, and if the home runs be what they are, I kind of think he will be a home run pitcher in the bad way. But there's a lot of other things I like about him. In fact, he's only 18, where the control, power, movement, all of that shit will go. It should be really, really good. Obviously, it's kind of interesting. He already has a 92 rated fastball and a 75 overall. I don't know if I've ever seen that. So this guy's gonna have a 100 rated fastball, I guess, or I don't know what will really top out, but of a dominant plus fastball.
Usually 99. I don't think I've seen anything higher than that on a pitch, but that's always something. I tell you what, when Dan was still in this league, that's something he and I always talked about and always looked for was dominant fastballs. And you're right, this is one of the most dominant ones I've seen in a while in the draft. It's been a long while in the draft since I've seen one that's that good. So it'll be very interesting to see how good he ends up and how quick he makes it up to the major leagues. I mean, he might be a guy that's ready in a year or two. So it'll be interesting to watch him flourish in Philadelphia up until Dave gets sick of him and sends him to Pittsburgh. So SXR goes next with the Dodgers. Dodgers take John Herbert. And this is a bat that I thought would go a little bit earlier in the draft, to be honest with you. I think John Herbert was a very solid, very good-looking right-handed bat. I think when you're looking at the right-handed bats, obviously Hindle went 2 overall, probably the best right-handed bat on the board, from just a straight bat standpoint. After that, you're looking at Comfort and Marriott, obviously, who we already talked about, also went top 5. But I think that this bat could also be quite good. And John Herbert, I mean, I think this is a bat that ends up with the high contact, high eye, good power. I mean, just a very good bat to have in your lineup. He's only 17. I think there's a good bit to like here with John Herbert. We'll see what happens in his October birthday, going into that offseason file. High health, a little bit of a scare. The fact that his batting stats aren't as high maybe as you would like to see them, but they've been progressing through those years in high school. Each year they get a little bit better. So I think there could be a lot to like here with Herbert.
Yeah, I really don't know how to really see him. Like on one point, I kind of want to like him because he's really young. The vitals are above his overall. That's pretty cool. But the power is only 68. I really think the contact's going to overtake the power sooner than later. And the fact that his eye is that much better than his contact, and it's the eye that is more of a low walk eye rather than a high walk eye. Or I mean, say low strikeout eye rather than a high walk eye. So just get a tough read on where he's going to end up. This is really something where I don't know. He's so young, so you don't know really what Mogul will do with him. But I'd have a tough time taking him. But at the same time, it could be a guy where you pass on him and he develops very well, and then and his vitals keep developing past his overall. So yeah, he's actually a very good player. It'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah, again, I like him. We will see what happens as I correct people in chat real quick. All right, next guy off the board is a guy that goes to the Kansas City Royals, and that is Javi Lechuga, or Lechuga, whichever one you want to go with. But Javi Lechuga, a 21-year-old right-handed starting pitcher. Interesting profile here. Definitely seems to be that the somewhat typical control movement. Obviously, the movement's already above the control, so I think the control is going to lag behind that movement as things progress forward. Got a dominant change up and a high ground ball rate. I mean, this is kind of that typical Kansas City pick, honestly. Not one of the guys that was on the top of my pitching board, but I can definitely see why you take this guy. Home runs don't seem to be an issue, and if he does get that good control, if the control can quite keep up or get somewhat similar to where that movement goes, you're looking at a guy that could be a pretty good pitcher in this league. So I think it's a good pick here in the bottom half of the teens. So what do you think on Lechuga?
Yeah, this is a pretty cool dude to want to like and have in your life. It's a real dominant changeup, which I've generally kind of taken to a Mogul puts into when a pitcher has a real nice sinker. I kind of think it just takes those pitches as one in the same. Of course, the ground ball rate's there, so but I can't really touch that with a changeup. Anyways, low homers, nothing to really worry about. A really nice control movement build. They are above the overall, so that's a pretty cool thing as well. And he's not Asian, so you have faith. You have faith.
Faith of the heart. All right, Montreal goes next and picks a 16-year-old. Shocker. Jake Poole goes to the Expos here at 19 overall. Jake Poole is an individual that I had a lot of conversations, I believe, with Jermaine in the pregame about. He was a guy that I was not a big fan of compared to Jermaine, who I believe was a big fan of this guy. If I'm remembering the guy that we were talking about, if it was Jermaine, I might be making shit up again. He projects to have a good glove, pretty good contact, nice power. Low eye, something that we've seen quite a bit in some of the bats in this draft. Just a guy, again, I wasn't overly interested of, even at 16, even with all that room to grow. just somebody that I wasn't as high on, I think, as Jermaine. So I think he went right around where I thought he was going to go. Whereas again, I believe Jermaine, might be proving me wrong already. Nope, he's not. Was saying he was going to be a top 10 pick easy. So not a bad player, especially as Gilly rebuilds once again. A guy that he could sit on and wait until he comes of age.
Well, the first thing I kind of noticed, so I'll kind of put ourselves into perspective here. So Jake Poole will have his 17th birthday here in 4 days. 71 years ago. So that's where we are in our file. As far as the player, I don't know. He's really young, so there's a reason there to roll the dice on him. He does have nice defense, so he's going to be able to play in the field. The problem is that I don't know what the offense is going to do. He has kind of, I would say, he's born on those drastic splits. His eye is complete shit. It'll be a miracle if he figures out how to draw a walk ever in his career. But 16, 17, hey, roll the dice on him and see what can happen. But I don't know about this early, but hey, you can make worse picks than this.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But again, I too many questions for me. We will see. Jay Hay. God damn it, PR. PR apparently is my English teacher tonight. He is continually trying to correct me in my enunciations, and he doesn't realize that I've never cared, and I'm not going to start anytime soon. Atlanta picks again at 20. Atlanta takes Eric May, a 17-year-old right-handed starting pitcher. Another one of those guys with that weird control power, equal movement, far behind builds. Who's also a high ground ball rate guy. So a little bit of an intrigue just based on that alone. It'll be interesting to see which way May goes with that. I mean, I think this is a lot similar to those guys we've been talking about. These guys that project to have, high 70s, low 80s control with, movement in the 90s. I don't know. Some of them I've liked, some of them I'm not. I don't know how successful these guys are going to be in the long run. I mean, his stats there in high school were not the best. So, I mean, Stang does a pretty good job of getting pitchers. I think the fact that probably that he was 17 or doesn't turn 18 till late in the year, and that he's born in the Ozarks, and maybe he's part of that crime syndicate down there, was kind of a thing that Stang liked. But there's just too many questions, I think, in a guy like this that I'm not overly sure about. But again, I tend to err on the side of caution. When GMs that typically pick pitchers that I don't like that typically do well. So I'll go the head that he might know what he's doing, but I wasn't the biggest fan of May.
Yeah, I'm not really sure I understand it all. When pitchers are this underdeveloped, I don't know, you can take much out of what their build is, or just before they're just that young, has that much upside that you wait 10 years and you get a really nice pitcher. That's pretty much it. I don't know if there's I don't know if there's much of a science to it. Maybe there is, maybe I'm missing something, but like I've taken some of these guys that are really raw and you just say, hey, he could be something. He's really young, and then it's just not much of anything.
Yeah, it's one of the, honestly, it feels like some of those guys end up turning out, because I'm pretty sure that was the same thing we said on Givens back when he was drafted by I believe GB way back when. And I mean, he's a guy that as he's aged, things seem to be going the right way for him. So I mean, it's one of those things that Mogul tends to like those young guys. Maybe that's why Gilly likes them. Hasn't helped him ever, but maybe that's why he likes him. So I mean, I was looking for Givens real quick. I mean, Givens was drafted at 16 overall and is here 19 overall at 76.95. Best projection, looking like a really good pitcher, not necessarily. But again, he's trending in the right direction at the very least. So we'll see how May goes. The Angels, and Maddie goes next, taking Jorge Vasquez. Matty, this is your pick. Guy with a high ground ball rate, definitely a guy that was toward the top of my pitching like list. So I'll leave it to you. What did you like about Jorge?
He was available. That's what I liked about him.
It was a bit surprising in this range that he was still available, but go on.
Yeah, it was. I didn't scout the draft at all. I was way too busy having fun this past weekend, and I just pretty much looked on at about whatever 10 o'clock, whenever the hell it was, and started looking through. And like Gilly just picked. I didn't see it really yet. I knew its thing was up. Like, oh shit, I'm up a couple picks, so maybe I can actually get my pick instead of just hoping for the best of sending my file over to Andy. But I was looking through, and I can see why maybe he fell a bit, because the home runs look a little high. But I think for the build and the amazing ground ball percentage and the repertoire and the fact that the endurance and health ball might be a little high, they're not extremely high. I was just surprised to see a guy like this still there, because at least in my file, he rates as one of the best pitchers in the draft. The fact that he only fell 2 points when he aged, probably 2 points is what I would say, because I'm guessing because the way mobile counts, the peak and overall once 93 plus is by 2, so I'm just figuring he was really at 94 peak and dropped to 92. So long time to develop. I'm absolutely thrilled to get a pitcher basically as I wake up hungover to make my selection, and hey, there's the pitcher that I would have been happy with taking at like 8th overall.
So you pulled off an inverse JB. That's great. Or GB. Jesus Christ, I'm getting tired. GB wakes up drunk and just shits the bed for 3 rounds. You wake up hungover and you're like, nailing this shit. No, it's bravo. That's hard to do. We will move on to Gary Waterhouse, who goes to Colorado, a 21-year-old right-handed pitcher. Another one of those guys, kind of that cusp of, is he going to be a ground ball guy? Is he going to be a power guy? What's he going to be? It is a very good question. What is he going to be? So when you really look at him, kind of start to break things apart, he appears to be another one of those guys that's probably going to be a movement guy with good power and pretty good control. Where's he going to land kind of in the grand scheme of things? I don't know. I think that with his overall below all of that minus movement, that that movement's going to really just kind of go jump, 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 jump. So I have a fear that he's not going to be that pitcher that you hoped he's going to be. The fact that I believe he already had a jump this year as well, in a 2-point jump at that, means that we've seen the jump. What's the crash going to be October 14th? So not a guy I was super high on. I think he ends up being a pretty good starter, and by pretty good I mean like mid-rotation starter drink. It's just nothing that's gonna be the top end that you're gonna be really happy about, but again, Colorado has some pretty good things to be happy about out there anyway, so even if you get a guy that's a mid-rotation starter out of this guy, probably okay with it. Maddie, what'd you think about Mr. Waterhouse?
He could be a mid-rotation starter, but he could be better than a mid-rotation starter, or he could be worse than a mid-rotation starter. Overall, he jumped. It wasn't a big jump. That might be a little foreshadowing to he's going to have a long time to develop, since I think both the overall and peak both jumped 2 points. So he kind of has that same drop back. He could peak out as a upper 80s peak and be a solid guy. But I don't know. Yeah. It's like I can't hate the pick, but I can't love the pick either.
Right. That's
where it is.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where it is. You're right. All right, the Red Sox take Max Avalos, a 21-year-old left-handed starting pitcher. Kind of a bit similar to the guy that we just talked about, but clearly has a lot more going for him. Power's 10 above his overall, control 6 above, movement 1 above. So it'll be very interesting dynamic to watch this guy, who has a lot more room potentially to grow than the last guy, and how he's going to do with that. Though, to be honest with you, when I'm looking at it, I think he ends up being very similar type pitcher overall. This is another guy that had a jump already this season. Looks like about a 5-point jump. He was a 52-84 at the start of our free agency this year. Is now 58.89. So he had a nice jump. So we'll have to wait and see that offseason fall and kind of where that takes him, because guys like this that have that kind of table build and then also have that big jump, sometimes fall right back to where that table build was. So that will be the biggest deciding factor on where he ends up, I think.
Yeah, I'd pretty much say exactly that. I think similar to the last bit, can't love it, but also I can't really hate on it. The fact that the jump, both peak and overall, were about the same. He could have a very similar crash down, and he'll just develop to a decent pitcher.
All right. Yankees at 24. This is the Tim Brame pick. They moved Tim Brame to pick up here, and they take a individual that I'm going to already assume that Maddie's not going to like based on his country of origin, and this is Ryokai Mahara. Fuck me. He is a 17-year-old ground ball pitcher from Japan, who does not have a home run problem, which is good to see. Strikeout to walkout ratio is not as good as some of the guys we saw earlier in the draft, but not poor either. It should be a very interesting pitcher. Again, another one of those guys that I kind of trust more than some others on pitching development. He doesn't project overly well in my eyes. But if Rocky sees something, then we'll see what Rocky sees as the years develop. He had a nice little jump, not too big, and not too small, kind of that just right jump. Actually, no, it was a lot bigger than I thought. I apologize. He went from a 63.89 to a 70.92. So that interesting jump there. Maddie, what did you think about him? You pretend that he's not Japanese for a minute, and then tell me what you think about him.
So his name is Ryan Mason, right? Okay.
Yep.
So, the control and movement are below the overall, and he has a 93 health, which makes me think that his control movement will never develop past that overall. And knowing that he already jumped, he'll just be a decent bottom of the rotation pitcher. You can fill him in there because with the ground ball rate, sure, but I don't think anything more than that. I think the what do you want to say? The illusion of youth gets you here, and he's going to be a guy who might peak out pretty early.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those guys. I think that if you get another good jump out of him, maybe you flip him real quick and pull the wool over somebody's eye. So, but it's one of those things. Again, there's certain people that I tend to trust a little bit more than others, especially when it comes to drafting pitchers. And Rocky tends to be in that category. So we'll see. Maybe there's something there that neither of us are seeing. Stang goes again next, taking Brian McKitchen. 16-year-old left-handed relief pitcher. I believe that when this happened, I saw a lot of later when I went back through the draft. I was working at the time, but a lot of people excited about the best relief pitcher going. And again, kid that's 16, got plenty of room to grow. Vitals look pretty good. There's a lot to like, I think, in this pitcher. This is one of those drafts that initially when I was planning on picking, I'm like, all right, well, I'll pull a Peter. And just put forth a list of all relief pitchers and just fucking hope for the best. But there wasn't a ton of relief pitchers that I really liked in this draft. But this is one of the guys that I did like. I think that he is got the potential to be a pretty good relief pitcher. So we'll see how it goes. He's young, got plenty of room to grow. And who knows? Stang might do that thing that I hate where he tries to turn him into a starter. We'll see about that too. But I do like this pick for Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things to really like about him. The ground ball rate's cool. The home runs, I don't think there's any issue there. With him only being 16, that's pretty cool too. And of course, with that build and the overall being where it is, only helps the fact that the home runs are low. However, I would still say he's a reliever. I don't trust relievers. I've sold out and tried to make some bold trades with a young reliever that I thought was going to be great, and they turn out to be just really decent. And I think that's just where relievers are in our file. It's not tough to find a really decent reliever. It's really tough to find an amazing reliever, and those they're just a dice roll because it's just the way the game develops relievers, the way relievers just work in general. I mean, for all the picks that thing has had, it's not a bad one to take and see what the hell can happen. Because if he can develop into a really nice closer, yeah, you don't got to go out and pay the iron price for Brian Mullock or whatever else, whatever that reliever was that SXR made someone believe was really, really wonderful. You can just have it all with one little first round pick.
If you get lucky enough to do it, take it. I mean, you're right. So I do. There was a couple of relievers that were on my list, not as many as I'd hoped. This is definitely the guy at the top of that reliever wise. So we will move on to our next pick. That is Minnesota. No longer the team held captive by Poldy, and they took center fielder Troy Smith. And Troy Smith is another one of those guys that you look at, and, you're not quite sure what he does for you. I think we talked about this earlier. Defense, clearly, he's got an arm, he's got range. I don't think the speed is going to be quite enough to make a difference out there in center field. So I think he ends up more being a good right fielder or a good left fielder, and not quite the center fielder that you'd hope for. Batting wise is where it's going to be interesting. So I'm not really sure exactly how this back will end up eking out. Does he end up being one of those contact power guys with a little bit of eye, who we've kind of seen a fair amount of in this draft? I think that's probably the more likelihood the way that he goes, having some decent contact, some decent, good contact, we'll say, decent power and an okay eye. And if that's the case, with his defensive makeup and the way that he'll play the corners pretty well in the outfield, maybe you end up being quite happy with this bat at this point of the draft. I mean, this is definitely a guy that probably you deserve to be pegged around this range. So we'll see. We'll see how he does out there in Minnesota as the years progress. What do you think about Smith?
I think in the end, he won't turn to be all that much different than Buster Sledge or Daryl Judson. That's one thing that I believe about him. I did kind of toy with him for probably like 3.2 seconds for pick 22, just because of that contact could get pretty good and the power could be decent. I believe someone just kind of sold on one of those guys for something pretty nice. He does have range and an arm, and if nothing else, gotta love the fact that he's the Wolverine Slayer. So go for it.
And go for it, he will. All right, we're moving on as we're closing out the first round here, or at least getting closer to it. 27 overalls, the New York Mets taking Peter Milken. Peter Milken is a 16-year-old right-handed starting pitcher with that nice build. I think that higher control, higher power, okay movement. The movement should catch up quite a bit. I think the question is, how quickly does it catch up? But I think this is a pitcher that projects to be pretty good. I think, and I'd even say better than some of the pitchers we've talked about more recently. Obviously, that last season he had, the home runs were a little bit high. But I think that usually I'm allowed in my mind to give them one bad season, as long as it remains one bad season, it doesn't continue. And I don't think 13 over 67 is real bad, but I think it's a little bit less than ideal. So, and again, another guy at 16, plenty of time to grow, plenty of room to grow. Might be a pretty solid pick. I think this is definitely worth the gamble here on the back end of the first.
Yeah, sorry, I was caught up into highlights. Yeah, Milliken.
Yes.
Yeah, really young guy. Does his thing. It's a really cool build. The control over the power, and then with both of those being a decent amount above the movement, good ground ball rates. The home runs are a little high, but I'll give him a pass for the fact that he's 16 years old, 52 overall, and 53 movements. Yeah, this is definitely the type of guy that you're happy about taking and seeing what can happen. You'll get to know pretty quickly of just how much his drop will be. So get a pretty good insight if you have a long time to develop, or if he's going to be an early peak out guy.
Yeah, well, 16-year-olds, I have the hardest time reading their developmental track sometimes. So we'll see on him. But until we do, we'll move on to the Dodgers. Dodgers take John Herbert earlier in this round. Later here, they take Rob Brown, a 21-year-old right-handed starting pitcher. A guy that is currently set for middle relief. It'll be interesting to see that which way SXR goes with him, if he puts him into a relief role, pure and simple, or puts him into the start role. That probably seems a little bit more likely. I kind of liked Rob Brown, if I'm remembering correctly. I think this is a guy that he had a drop earlier on his birthday, but that drop was not on his birthday. I apologize. His birthday's not in November, but it does look like he had a random 1-point drop. Maybe that scared some people off, but I kind of like this pick, especially for where it is in the round. I think that Rob Brown has a chance to be a pretty good pitcher. So I think he does well picking up Brown here at the end of the round and Herbert kind of in the mid-late rounds. So like this first round draft by the Dodgers this year.
He's not a bad guy to like and want to take with the build and the ground ball rate. I would say you definitely got to make him a pitcher. We've already got the endurance, and you get a lot more mileage out of a starter than a reliever. It's a no-brainer. But solid guy. This could be yeah. He could be a good mid-rotation pitcher for you.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he projects a little bit higher than some of the guys we've been talking about here the last couple picks. So Washington goes next, second to last. Should have been last, but wasn't due to Doug's negligence in drafting. And he takes Jeff Weekle, 17-year-old starting pitcher, who is a high ground ball pitcher out of Teaneck, New Jersey. And another guy that looks pretty good on paper. I mean, you look at those amateur stats, there's a lot of stuff to like there. When you look at him and his potential kind of moving forward, I think it's another one of those guys that I think he projects a little bit worse than the gentleman we were just talking about, but still projects as a pretty solid pitcher. Another one of those guys, I don't have to say drink, but he gets one of those magic winter ball roles. He ends up being much better than initially thought or projected. And that can make a big difference in his career developmental path.
Yeah, the build is great for what you want out of a young pitcher. A lot of upside, and the ground ball rate is there. That's only two things, but still I'd say that's the trifecta of success. Maybe it's three because there's the age. But nonetheless, yeah, it's a guy you want to take. I don't know you really care so much about the peak at this point. You just have to figure he's going to develop a long time. If you get screwed and he peaks out at 24, whatever. But all the signs are there on draft day. It's not a bad pick.
Yeah. No, not. Peter picks guys I think that most people don't expect there in the late first, and ends up doing pretty well out of them. So I can't knock his style. Last pick in the first round is the second pick in the first round, and that is Alfredo Ortega going to Athletics on the auto pick. Could he have been given a worse player? He could have been given a worse player. Was there better players that he could have picked if he had been around to pick? Yes, there was. I mean, this is a guy that projects to be a heavy power bat. And by heavy, I mean he's going to weigh a lot. He's not going to have the best contact. He's surely going to have a lot of power, and he's not going to have that much of an eye. His defense might be okay, actually. It might be a little bit above average for the outfield, or at least around average for the outfield. But, I think the only saving grace you have with him here is the fact that he's 16. You look at 16, you look at that power. That little bit of speed that probably just helps really in the outfield, more likely left field than anywhere else. I feel bad for Doug. Apparently, I was the only one to feel bad for Doug in this draft, but that being what it is, not the best auto I've seen, but far from the worst too. So hopefully he's learned from this debacle.
Yeah, the build isn't all that great. Contact sucks, eye sucks. Oh, not sucks. They're just they're fucking shit. But he is 16, so Mogul likes to do some crazy shit with those 16-year-olds, just like Gilly does with 17-year-olds. So eventually, maybe that contact will get there with the power. He could actually be a decent player.
Yeah, I hope he does. I hope he bucks the trend and it becomes really good. I really do, for Doug's sake. So outside of the first round here, there were a couple of guys that I honestly thought were going to go in the first round. Thank God I didn't do a mock draft this year because I was too busy, being back at work. Bobby Fruin, who went to Kansas City, was a guy that I think if he hadn't had the drop that he had, would have gone a lot higher. I was a big fan of his. I was surprised to see him slip into the early second, but I think Casey ends up real happy with him. Hell, I think Casey ends up being pretty happy with getting Norwood right before him too. So it'll be it'll be interesting. There was definitely some guys that I was projecting to go early that went a little bit late. Guys that I almost like, oh man, if I kept some of the picks that I had, I would have actually gotten some of these guys. It would have been nice. But I think those guys that Casey took were two of the guys that I thought second round and beyond were good pickups. So, but I didn't do real deep scouting of what past what I thought would be in the first. So, Matt, was there any guys that you saw that you liked that went later than you think they should have?
Just a couple of them. One of them is Fruin. Fruin is the guy that I almost took at 22. I think a lot of people, kind of like you said with that 4-point drop, got scared away, but they got scared away for the wrong reasons. So what that he dropped 4 points. If you do the math out on it, this is a guy who's probably going to develop until he's 25. So it's nothing to worry about. I mean, a 4-point drop when you're a 22-year-old, sure, that's something to worry about because you got limited time. You have limited upside and limited time to develop. Maybe the health scared people away from Bruin too, but that build compared to the overall just had me saying, "Hell yeah, let's go for this guy." But
yeah,
course,
I had him as one of my top 5 pitchers. That's why I was very surprised to see him go so far down.
Yeah, I mean his build still projects pretty well, I do believe. Where is he? Yeah, his build right now. This mobile doesn't do anything odd with it. I project him as 87, 79, 86. And I'm going to be led to believe that. I mean, and that's, of course, saying that the health hold him back. The health doesn't hold him back. He'll be even better than that. It's definitely a guy that you'd want. And surprised it fell into the second round. Another guy I really liked, and I even told PR you got to take either Bruin or this guy, Steve Thomas. Just a guy that I think when you look at him, I think he's kind of hidden because offensively he doesn't have any rating that's 80 plus. Heck, and only the speed is 70 plus. So he doesn't look like he's amazing. But judging by his base running abilities and his amateur stats, I think he'll steal a decent amount of bases and be pretty efficient at it. The defense, who knows, is going to be there. It's just it's kind of one of those guys that I get the impression of like a Carlos Meneses. Not that he's going to get to that level or even that similar build. I'm not saying that at all, but just the guy that I think, like on draft day, their build didn't look amazing. But if you sit back and try and project out how Mogul is going to develop those vitals starting out the way that they are, I think you would really like the end result. And the fact that, again, he's only 16 years old, he has a lot of time to develop. This guy could be really, really special by the time he's peaked.
There was one other guy that I liked. I went back and looked at my notes, and I'm trying to see where he went. I wish I could. My God, Oakland got him in the 4th round. That is funny. This is a guy that you're not going to like because he is from Japan, and that is Kazuya Ishimini, a 19-year-old catcher with a big arm, okay handling, and a bat that I think that projects better than some people are going to think. So, maybe there's the saving grace for Oakland. They get a guy that I think could be a pretty good starting catcher in the 4th round. This 19-year-old Shimi. So, I think that is good. I'm assuming Otto. I'm assuming that was an Otto pick, but I kind of like him. So we'll see what happens with that. So. But again, that is our first round recap. Most people, as you can see, have already left the chat. So, Maddie, any parting words of wisdom for our fellow FCMers?
I guess don't pull a Doug, especially in this time in our lives and our nation and all that. I mean, I guess if something really bad happened to him and he's incapacitated, couldn't do this stuff, I'd feel really bad. But even though like personal tragedy hits and all that, I think we all got a couple minutes to at least whip out our phones and say, "Hey, Andy, I'm in a really fuck situation." Either try to pick something really good for me, or it's gonna have to wait until Sunday. Like, let the dude know, like something. Like, there's nothing in our lives that says that we'll devote our attention 24/7. We can take a couple minutes out just to get on real quick and say, "Hey, I know it's draft weekend. This is what's going on. 2 minutes out of your day."
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. If able, I think that's great. For as much work as Andy puts in this league, just dropping him a quick line. Hey, shit came up. Can you? He'll do it. I mean, he'll do it. He's not going to say no. So, I think that's a very good point. So, but from all of us here to all of you sitting at home listening, good night and good luck on the rest of the season, because some of you will need it. Goodbye.